You know, if we ever actually did have a purge, you can believe this. Any of you motherfuckers involved with Freddy's Dead or Seed of Chucky, you can run, but you can't hide. So the First Purge is a prequel to the Purge franchise, 3 movies in, so this is the 4th one, telling the story of how the government used Staten Island as this little petri dish for a social experiment where all crime is legal for 12 hours. Alright guys, another Purge movie. So I will say, just to kind of color my response to this franchise as a whole, there's really only been one Purge movie that I genuinely like a lot. You know, it's a franchise that I think has a lot of potential that they never quite nailed, except for the one time, in my opinion. But, you know, it's a movie that a lot of people like. It's a movie that every single 2 years or whatever, whenever the 4th of July thing comes around, you have the little Purge comes on teasers and trailers. Crowds seem to go nuts for it. So this franchise obviously has fans. They're coming out with a TV series very soon, so maybe that'll be successful, maybe it won't. But as far as my thoughts on the franchise, not the biggest fan overall. So with that being said, the trailers, the concept for this First Purge didn't really intrigue me a whole lot. I'm not a big fan of prequels for the most part. I think that a lot of movies, whenever you get to the point where you need a prequel, that's when they've run out of ideas. Like, oh, let's just go back and tell how it happened, even though the other 3 movies in this franchise has pretty much already spelled out exactly how it happened. There's not really any answers that we need that haven't already been given to us in this franchise. So First Purge, I was like, okay, maybe it'll give me some cool horror, maybe it'll give me some cool action. It'll at least be entertaining, hopefully, like the past 2 movies have been. Yeah, this movie certainly doesn't change my thoughts about the Purge franchise one bit. But, you know, there are some good things about it, so I'll start with those. First thing that I liked about this movie, which at first in the early, let's say the first third of the movie, I thought was going to be a problem, but it actually ended up being kind of a positive. I like the way that the movie's paced, because it starts off a little bit slow. It doesn't really get right into the action and the craziness like the past couple of them have. It kind of builds the universe of where it is in the timeline. You know, it shows some of the social reasons why the government is going for this and why everybody that's not for it is against it. You know, it's setting up how they're getting people to get behind this idea, this experiment, which the people actually call the Purge. It shows, you know, how they're paying people to contribute to it and to participate in it, not just saying, hey guys, do what you want for 12 hours, let's see what happens. There is some kind of government motivations for people to kind of get some participation. Some of those ideas and some of the pacing for the first third was interesting, and then it moves into a little bit more into your regular Purge territory where there's crazy shit going on. Some people are just trying to stay alive. Some people are trying to purge, and then it builds to a pretty action-packed third act. So throughout the movie, the pace kind of builds at a nice little clip to where it never quite feels boring. It never feels like it's starting to slow. It never feels like the pace goes up and down. It kind of has this nice steady climb all the way to the climax. And I will say, although there are some serious issues I have with some of the characters, which I'll get into in a little bit, I like the way that they tie all of our main characters together. Even though they're separate people and very different motivations, very different sides of the social circles in this Staten Island community, they have like this tight-knit story to where, you know, you have the main guy basically who's the drug kingpin of Staten Island. His ex-girlfriend's kind of like your symbol of hope. She's the one who's kind of protesting the Purge. You got her troubled younger brother who's actually trying to participate in the Purge to get money so they can get out of this shitty apartment. All that kind of ties together. It gives 3 different characters, 3 different perspectives for 3 different motivations for why they are or aren't for the Purge. But it all ties in nice because they all know each other and they all their pasts kind of tie to each other. So it was nice to have kind of a collaboration as far as these 3 characters that you're following that all kind of feel like they're part of one group versus the past couple of Purge movies where there's just a lot of different characters that don't know each other until this event happens, and it's just the event itself is why they are together, not necessarily their past. So nice little change of pace with the characterizations. And I think the acting for the most part is suitable in this. You know, it's a series that's never really gone for big acting performances, even though they always seem to get really good casts. This is probably the most like scaled down. Really the only notable name is Marisa Tomei, and her character is very minuscule in this, but you know, you get some pretty suitable acting. Some of the characters are really good. The other characters are just good enough. There's not anybody that really stands out as this really off-the-wall performance. There's nobody that stands out of this really over-the-top performance. It does what it needs to do for a Purge movie. And finally, I will say that if you are an action fan, if you like kind of the more action direction that they've went with the past couple of movies and not so much of a horror focus, the third act of this movie will satisfy you because it really goes into almost like Die Hard territory, which I'll talk a little bit more into, but where it's just a lot of gunplay, a lot of hand-to-hand fighting. So the third act of this movie, if you're an action hound, is going to give you some eye candy and some entertainment that's going to make you walk away thinking, okay, that was a pretty cool climax. Now moving into the negatives of the First Purge. First of all, just an underwhelming story overall. How did the Purge get started? Well, any answer that they give in this movie, like I've already hinted at, you probably could have already gotten that exact answer from watching the other films because it's not really that deep of an origin. The government wants to get rid of all the people in the lower class so that they don't have to spend money on them for welfare and for, government housing and everything, so they create this purge. They've already established that in the other movies. Oh my God, the government people are sending people in to shoot people so it makes it look like more people are participating than actually are. They said that in the other movies too. So there's not really any revelation in this movie that justifies this movie existing aside from the fact of we know the Purge movies make money, so let's just make another one.
They all ex-military. Something funky going down, D.
You're sending soldiers into the island disguised as citizens.
This country needs for this to work.
And moving on from that, we'll talk about the characters. Now, the characters in this, there's not really anybody to me that stood out as this character that I wanted to follow, because usually you have one character in these movies that kind of has a moral stance or they're just kind of a badass. So there's some reason why you latch onto them where you're like, okay, I'm following them. I'm going on their journey. Even though these other characters are along with them, they're the ones I'm keeping my eye on. You don't really have that in this. It's nice that all the characters kind of know each other and their storylines tie in, but you got like the main guy who's the drug kingpin. You can't sympathize with him because he's a drug kingpin and he's murdering people left and right for doing the exact same thing that he is doing. So it's not like he has some kind of a, moral code as this gangster, as this king of crime in Staten Island. You get the main girl, and she seems like that kind of character at first, but she switches her stance so quick in the movie where she's against violence, she's against the life of crime, she's against the purge, and as soon as it conveniences her for her own survival, all of a sudden she's okay with all the gunplay and the violence, and suddenly she has all these skills with guns and how to, survive different situations that she picked up from her past life with this boyfriend. And then you get the younger kid who you kind of sympathize with him about wanting to get more money and kind of better the situation from him and his sister. But he's that typical character you get in a movie like this that just does stupid decision after stupid decision after stupid decision to where as soon as he starts being stupid, you're like, okay, well, I can't care about you anymore because you've already bought into this purge thing. You've gotten the money from the government. You started wearing these little things on your eyelids, which we'll talk about, or your eyeballs, which I'll talk about too. And you're going off to get revenge on this guy Skeletor, which is just a really over-the-top evil character that would have never been walking the streets of Staten Island in the first place if you want to be realistic at all. This guy is so fucking evil and maniacal, he would have been in jail in 5 minutes on the streets. You're on a revenge path for him, and as soon as you get to him, you can't pull the trigger. I mean, we've seen this so many times in so many movies. You have every reason in the fucking world to shoot this person, and when it comes time to it, you're like, and you run away. Sorry, can't care about you. And even down to Marisa Tomei's character. Now, she was the one that I was kind of intrigued by from the trailers because she's kind of the architect of this purge concept. She's like this psychologist. She's somebody that has kind of come up with the idea of if you let somebody purge their violent instincts, then it kind of tones down their violent instincts for the rest of the year or something like that. And the government takes that as their way to get rid of the lower class. So they take this social experiment that she's trying to do for, human research purposes and takes it into this political motivation.
We are here with Dr. May Updale. She came up with this experiment. Is the purge a political device?
It is a psychological one. If we want to save our country, we must release all our anger in one night.
And throughout the movie, it's really hard to get behind her character because you never know what the fuck her moral stance is because she's trying to do it for, human progression reasons. All the while, she's in bed with the government, which is corrupt from just the way these people carry themselves, and they're going to start, having people murder innocent people surrounding them. And then at the time that the government shit starts happening, where they're sending mercenaries in to kind of throw the game a little bit and to kind of, make the purge seem more successful than it actually is, suddenly she's outraged, and suddenly she has to put a stop to everything. So I'm confused. So you're okay with people murdering each other unless the government is the one murdering people? I don't get it. And a lot of that does just go back to the writing that I was talking about. Just not very well written characters. Some of the smaller negatives I'll talk about too before I get into the big thing that annoyed me is that the timeline of this movie is a little bit screwy, because if you watch election year, they tell you that 25 years ago, at the time of the election year, which presumably was like 2016, 25 years prior to that, so 1991, is when the Purge was brought into effect. So you're supposed to believe this movie was in the early 90s at least, if not the late 80s. And it doesn't feel like that at all. Like, it doesn't feel like it's any kind of a period piece. It feels like it's modern times. I don't remember if I saw cell phones or anything, because that didn't really dawn on me until after I left the movie, but it just doesn't feel like a movie that takes place in any year other than today. So unless there's some detail I missed in earlier Purge movies where it's, you know, set 25 years in the future and I just never realized it, the timeline's a little bit off with their whole prequel concept. Especially when you have like Terminator-style drones going around shooting people, and you have these little things I was talking about where anybody that participates has to wear these little contacts that have video surveillance technology, so everything that they see gets synced to the government so that they can show it live on TV and show what's happening in the Purge. Like, sorry, that shit wasn't happening in 1990. And beyond that, this movie is just not scary. It doesn't really have a ton of tension. It doesn't really have that much of atmosphere. Nothing that I really go to a horror movie to see. And that's kind of a negative of the whole series overall. It's just The Purge is supposed to be like this horror series, but it's really more of an action, somewhat thriller series. And I just want more horror. You know, I want more scary shit. I want to be more into darkness when I go see a Purge movie. I want to see brutal kills. I want to see like a demented, fucked up version of the Warriors when I see a Purge movie. And I just never quite get that. I feel like in the first Purge, it's the least scary of all of them. I mean, if arguably the first one, which is probably the worst one, was the most horror focused, and you get to this one, and it just feels like they've abandoned any sense of horror. It's just some darkness and some action. But my main negative that I walked away with this movie is how heavy-handed, like extremely heavy-handed, their anti-Trump and anti-Trump's America message is, and how overly political they try to be, and they're trying to be subtexty and clever, but it's not at all. It's just, it's not that smart of a franchise. It's not that smart enough of a writer to do that. All that stuff really annoyed me. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a Trump supporter, so it's not annoying me because it's like, you know, it's bashing a guy that I support or any reason. It's nothing like that. It's just that in today's society, whether you're online, watching a movie, listening to music, it's politics all the time. Politics, politics, Trump, Trump, politics. And when I go to a movie, I want to escape from all that bullshit. I want to go and enjoy myself. If you're going to throw some political commentary, some social commentary in there, fine. But there's movies that do it well, and there's movies that suck at it, and this is one that sucks at it. It just throws it right in your face as if it's trying to be clever. I mean, you got a line in this movie where one of our heroines goes, she gets stuck in this little snare trap, she falls down, these hands start coming out of the sewers, grab her in her crotch, she kicks him in the face and sprays pepper spray on him and runs away and says, "You pussy grabbing motherfucker!" And it's like, you literally brought the movie to a screeching halt for that lame-ass Trump joke. The movie is like that throughout the whole thing. That's the worst part, but throughout the whole movie, it's anti-Trump, anti-Trump, politics, politics, politics. I kind of knew I was in board for that whenever the first teaser poster for this movie showed the Make America Great Again hat, but it just said the First Purge. I knew that's the direction they were going to go, and I was curious of what they were going to do. When you get a movie like this where the writing is just so bad, and they try to do these clever social commentaries about, you know, the oppressed Black America, and conveniently all of the bad guys and everybody evil in this entire fucking movie is white. And I don't think there's a single white person that's not evil in this movie. It just seems extremely heavy-handed. I mean, you got all these mercenaries and government killers brought in. They're all Caucasian, and everybody who's on the good side is all Black America. Even though there's definitely some white people, some Hispanics and everything in Staten Island, it's just blacks versus whites in the sake of the Purge. And it just feels like this is not the type of movie that should be doing something that heavy-handed, because it just doesn't land in the right way. Not to mention when your, you know, symbol of hope and your hero for what is presumably the oppressed Black America in this movie is a drug kingpin, that doesn't quite land the way that it should. I mean, this guy goes from Wesley Snipes in New Jack City to suddenly in the third act, he's the Black John McClane. And just realism aside, going from that to that, when you're trying to do this political statement, it just kind of makes everything crumble beneath you, and it doesn't make your argument or whatever statement you're trying to make with this movie is not gonna land, because it's all ridiculous.
They forgot about one thing. They forgot about us.
What have I done?
Run!
And I'm sure there's some people who saw the movie that maybe they thought all of that was great. They thought that that was, voicing some opinions that need to be voiced, or, representing certain aspects of a certain argument that needed to be said. And sure, I mean, I'm all for all that. Some things need to be said. There's movies like Get Out that do it really good, where they have social commentary that is presented in a very clever, very well-written way. In my opinion, this is like the bottom of the barrel with that, though. You have a movie that's just so pathetic with some of the things that they're trying to say, that it's so in your face and so obvious that it's just not coming through in the way that they want it, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of others. And as much as I praised that third act of the movie, because it is one of the more entertaining segments of this film for sure, just because of the eye candy and the action and the hand-to-hand fighting and gunplay, all that's good stuff if you're an action fan, it gets really over the top, especially when the guy who's basically the one you're following through all this action was the drug kingpin character. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this guy has like military-grade fighting skills, shooting skills. He's unstoppable. He runs past dead bodies with body armor, doesn't even bother because he's got his iron fucking white wife beater on. I mean, this guy just, it's crazy how much of an action superhero he becomes out of nowhere, and just annihilates motherfuckers left and right like it's just his second nature. Almost like the drug kingpin thing is like some kind of a front, and he's actually like some kind of super mercenary sent in to protect Staten Island. It's just, it gets really over the top, to the point where if you don't shut your brain off and just enjoy it for what it is, and you think about it at all beyond what's above the surface, it falls apart.
At the siren, all crime, including murder, will be legal for 12 hours.
There's a lot of good people out there who we're gonna have to protect.
All emergency services will be suspended.
We gotta be prepared for anything.
Your government thanks you for your participation.
But I will say this. Overall, if you are a fan of the Purge franchise, you will like this one. There's a lot of things in here that I think are negatives, that I've thought of negatives for the entire franchise for the most part, and there's a lot of people that love this franchise. So if you are a fan of The Purge, go and see it. You will enjoy it. If you're somebody that aligns with a lot of my thoughts about why this franchise has a lot of wasted potential, then you're probably going to walk out as disappointed as I was. So if you love this franchise, you probably already have seen it, but if you're on the fence, go ahead and check it out. You're probably going to get a lot more of what you enjoy from The Purge. If you're not so much a fan of this franchise like me, you're probably going to walk out with the same thoughts as I have. So just hold on to your money, check this thing out when it goes onto streaming services, and check it out on Netflix. So what do you guys think of the First Purge? Are you a fan of this franchise at all? What's your favorite one, your least favorite one? Did you get all of like the social commentary and the political statements they were trying to make as annoying as I did, or did you find it really clever the way that they inserted it into the Purge? Put all of your thoughts on this movie and the franchise down in the comment section below, guys, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out some of my social media links, I got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt, and my Patreon page down in the video description below. Patreon's a great way to give back to this channel and help it grow and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only, like the ability to suggest reviews for me. All of my patrons above $10 get to actually pick reviews for me to do. Requested reviews is a patron exclusive privilege that I give to those guys, and I also give them the Blu-ray codes, the digital copy codes on all the movies that I buy every single week. All that is patron exclusive, so check that out, guys, if you're interested. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.